Hi everyone, this is Tin Goose bringing you an around the world update of all of my tanks. So it has been a while since I've posted my last video. Just been really busy with a lot of things, a lot of exciting things going on in my life. But as we hit the new year, 2017, I'm really excited to get back into making videos. So stay tuned. A lot of content coming up this year. A lot of new things I'm doing with my tanks that I'd like to share. So we'll start with the 75 gallon planted. It's Saturday mornings. I haven't done maintenance yet, so it's looking a little overgrown. A little work needs to be done to it. But I figured I'd give you a pre-maintenance update. We'll kind of start to the right. The jungle valve just keeps exploding. I've already donated about 20 of those to my local fish store for store credit, and I need to do it again because it's growing like crazy, but looking great. Everything else is growing really well. I've cut back a lot of the compacta. That stuff was exploding everywhere. I need to probably start cutting back that Java fern, but I just love the look of it right now, so I'm not going to. The water trumpets, which I just moved from the sand to here, are going so much better in this EcoComplete substrate. Even though it's on root tabs in both, it just kind of shows the difference substrate's going to make to your root plants. The rep ends, I need to maybe do a lot of work on them and maybe a video about them later. And of course the crypts. So the tank's looking great, the inhabitants are doing just fine. As you can see, I've added a whole lot of cherry barbs to here. I just got to realize I had about 3 cherry barbs I moved over from their tank to here and was kind of curious how they would do. And they were looking so good in the light, and really just started liking the look of them. So I decided that I was going to expand out that school of cherry barbs. I had some room in the tank, so now I've got 7 males, 8 females, all doing really well in here, and they just look really awesome with this tank and with that Phoenix 24/7 light that kind of runs on that cycle, the morning light, mid-afternoon light, and then that evening light. And you get that evening blue light, the cherry barbs really pop. And so someday I want to do a video on them, but I really love that species. They look awesome in here. Other happenings in here, if you've watched my prior videos, I had a DIY CO2 setup, which was working fine. I was happy with it, but I decided to experiment with some other types of setups too, just to keep some content coming. And so I'm going to do a video in the future about entry-level pressurized CO2. So I did do a paintball CO2 setup that is very inexpensive, and you can't really see it in this light, but I will do a video on that in the future. Wasn't that I was unhappy with the other setup, I really just wanted to experiment and do some different things, and so I'd like to do a video on that CO2 and kind of talk about plant growth and CO2 in general, because right now this is the only tank I actually run CO2 on, and obviously everything responds better with the CO2, but I want to show you my other tanks. You can kind of judge for yourself that you can get some really good growth without CO2. So hang on, I'm going to walk around to the other tanks. Quick update on the edge. A while back I rescaped this. It was looking phenomenal and really growing in well. And then I added some new plants to it a while back, and unfortunately I introduced snails. So I now have a bit of a snail infestation that I'm fighting here, and it's really taking its toll in the tank. So I want to do a future video on what I'm doing to try to eradicate that, and also a future video on my thoughts on the edge. I think long term I won't keep this tank up for much longer. It's just, it looks really cool, the idea is nice, but in practicality it just had a few things are lacking. So if you've kept up with my comments of late in terms of what tanks I'd recommend, I don't know where I stand on this one. It looks really great, but I think it definitely has some opportunities in terms of what you're looking to do, especially if you're doing a planted tank. So more to come on that. On to the next one. So here we are at the 15-gallon quarantine. This is definitely a non-traditional quarantine tank. This is actually a permanent tank that I run in my house. It's a basic 15-gallon planted tank, nothing special, just a Phoenix Stingray on top for the lighting, and no CO2 or anything else like that. All low light plants are all doing well. The goal of this quarantine is that any fish that's meant for the 40 or 75 stops off here first for 3 weeks, just so I can observe them. And right now I'm quarantining these rainbows, praecox and turquoise in here. I'm glad I did, because after adding them, I noticed a little bit of cottonmouth fungal infection on 2 of them, and they all came from the same tank at the local fish store. So this gives me a chance to isolate them, treat the disease with a smaller dose of medication versus having to medicate to 75. And so it's very effective. They've been here for about 3 weeks. I haven't lost anybody. They're going to be in here for at least another month. I usually quarantine for 3 weeks, but I really want to be extra cautious before I add anything into one of my main tanks. So at least another month until I'm 100% comfortable to add them. I'm really in no rush. So and they're doing fine in here. So this has been an effective process for me. Might not be for everybody, but for me, this has been very effective. And also an awesome tank to look at. It's actually one of my favorite ones. I have a hard time picking. For a low light tank, low light requirement plants, you know, nothing special, no CO2, just a little bit of ferts, and I'm getting great growth. So you can have a planted tank as long as you're selective with the light requirements. And this is, like I said, not even a planted tank light that I have. The dwarf lily looks awesome. I've propagated this multiple times into other tanks and back to my local fish store. This jungle val was just a small runner from the 75 that's exploded. Actually, it's exploded too much. That's got to come out. So I'm probably going to take that out and take it back to, or take it to my local fish store for some credit. And like I said, it's a maintenance routine, so everything's looking a little overgrown. I definitely have some work to do in here today to cut some of this back and make it look a little nicer. But overall, I love this tank. Have a few permanent inhabitants. This male crebensis is a deformed runt. He's got like a mouth deformity, so he actually has a hard time eating. That came from my breeding pair. He has a hard time competing, so he is going to just be a permanent resident here. And he's a pretty neat little fish. You know, he's deformed. I have this female pearl gourami I'm trying to decide. She was in the 75 for a while. She got beat up really bad recently, so I put her in here to treat her, and she immediately got better, but I just got to kind of decide what her permanent home is going to be like. I'm afraid to put her back in the 75. Not sure what really happened to her in there. But she seems to be doing fine in here. And this little Chinese algae eater, who is a kind of semi-permanent resident, he may eventually go into 75, but I just wanted to have kind of an extra cleanup crew / Chinese algae eater available to put in one of the tanks should I need one that's fully quarantined. So that's a look at the 15. Really happy with how this looks, and I know it's non-traditional, but I do have a 5-gallon hospital tank, kind of temporary setup I will do should I really need to isolate a fish to treat, which I've used in the past, and maybe I'll do a video on that in the future. But a great idea if you can afford it to have maybe a stopping off point so you don't introduce any harmful diseases to your main tanks. You have a lot invested in those, and it could be pretty devastating should you introduce something to one of those tanks. So I find this is very effective for me. I highly recommend this kind of process to you. And you can do it in a way like this where you have still a nice tank to look at. It's not plain and can still add to a room. So this is the 15. Last but certainly not least, the 40-gallon Clear for Life setup. So I set this up about a year ago and had to do some rescaping, some rework into here, but very happy with how it's ended up. Everyone's doing awesome. I've added these Congos. I actually don't know if I've done a video with the Congos, so I do plan on doing a species profile on these because they have just quickly become one of my most favorite fish to have. And I want to do a much more in-depth review of them. Tank's looking great. I've had to rip out a few plants, but I've added some different ones into here, just kind of get the balance right. And I've actually taken out the CO2 setup in here. I'm still getting great growth, so kind of have a mix of tanks. So I have the 75 with CO2, this one now without, 15 without, and kind of looking forward to do a little profile on the difference between those setups in the future, so something to look forward to. But just wanted to give you a quick update of all the tanks. We'll do a more in-depth one on this one. So this is probably the tank I've done the least amount of videos on in the future, but really happy with how it's looking and all of them are looking, and looking forward to adding some new content in 2017. So tune in, like, subscribe. Let me know if you have some video ideas. I have a few of my own I'm looking forward to doing. I know I owe a CO2 video very soon on my new setup, so I will be getting to that one very shortly. But if you have other things you'd like to see, or profiles you'd like me to do, reviews you'd like me to cover on my setups, I'm happy to do them. But yeah, subscribe and look for new content in 2017. Have a great weekend, great new year to everyone out there, and wish you all the best.